and you pick up a box with the word healthy printed right across the front. You turn it over, squint at the small print, and drop it in your cart, feeling like you did something good for yourself. Here's what I want you to know. That word on the front, healthy, light, balanced, is marketing. It is not a promise about your blood sugar. The number that actually decides what happens to you after dinner is hidden on the back. In print, most of us can barely read anymore. And after 60, this matters more than it ever did. Your kidneys clear salt more slowly. Your blood vessels have stiffened just a little. A single frozen dinner can carry nearly a full day's worth of sodium, the salt hidden in your food, and quietly push both your blood pressure and your morning sugar the wrong way, while the front of the box smiles at you. So today, I'm going to walk you through the 5 best frozen meals for blood sugar and type 2 diabetes, ranked and chosen for a body over 60, not for a 25-year-old. I'll show you the ones to leave on the shelf, too. Stay with me all the way to number 1, because it's the one almost everyone walks straight past in that aisle, and it may be the smartest choice of all. Before we go any further, do me a small favor. Walk to your freezer in your mind right now. How many of those frozen dinner boxes are sitting in there waiting for you tonight? Type that number in the comments. And if you'd like more plain-spoken medical guidance on keeping your blood sugar steady after 60, subscribe so the next one finds you. Now let me tell you something that changes how you see that whole aisle. What we lump together as frozen food is really 2 very different worlds sharing the same cold shelves. On one side, you have whole ingredients frozen at their peak, bags of broccoli, green beans, spinach, plain fish fillets, chicken breast. On the other side, you have the prepared dinners, the entrees and bowls that come fully assembled and ready to microwave. To your blood sugar, these 2 are almost opposites. And here's the part that surprises most people. Those plain frozen vegetables are not the villains you might think they are. A 2-year study in the Journal of Food Composition and Analysis found that when there was any difference in vitamin content, frozen produce actually beat fresh produce that had been sitting in a refrigerator for 5 days more often than not. A separate analysis in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry back in 2015 found vitamin C levels in frozen produce that matched or exceeded the fresh version. The reason is simple. Freezing locks nutrients in place at the moment of ripeness instead of letting them fade during days of shipping and storage. The real risk lives on the other side of the aisle. Those prepared entrees are what scientists call ultra-processed foods, and the research on them is sobering. A large study in diabetes care in 2023, led by Chen and colleagues, followed nearly 200,000 Americans and found that the people eating the most ultra-processed food had roughly a 46% higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. A 2025 meta-analysis pooling 12 separate groups landed in the same place, with a relative risk near 1.48. But I want to be fair here. Not every prepared meal is equally harmful. The danger isn't the fact that something was frozen. It's the sodium, the refined starch, and the hidden sugar packed inside certain products. Which brings me to Ray. Ray is 69, newly retired, living on his own, and he was diagnosed with type 2 last year. After that diagnosis, he did what he thought was right. He filled his freezer with boxes stamped lean and lighter, certain he was choosing wisely. And still, his morning numbers kept creeping up. He'd hold each box out at arm's length to read it, because he never remembers where he set his glasses. The trouble wasn't that Ray was lazy, it's that he was reading the wrong side of the box. So let's fix that. Let me hand you the skill Ray was missing, the one that takes about 30 seconds and works on any box in that aisle. Whether a frozen meal helps your blood sugar or quietly sabotages it comes down to 4 numbers on the back, not the words on the front. The first is sodium, the salt hidden in your food. If you're 51 or older, or you're living with diabetes or high blood pressure, the guidance is to stay under 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day. That's the dietary guidelines backed by the CDC. Now here's the problem. A single prepared entree can carry somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 milligrams, nearly your whole day's budget in one tray. And sodium doesn't just lift blood pressure, it pulls water into your bloodstream, which raises your blood volume, which presses harder on your vessel walls. And that higher pressure makes your cells more resistant to insulin. So aim for under 600 milligrams per serving. The second number is total carbohydrate. A reasonable range for one meal is about 30 to 45 grams. Watch out for white rice or white noodles sitting underneath everything, because that's where the count quietly climbs. The third is fiber. You want at least 3 grams. Fiber is your signal that the carbohydrate came from something whole rather than something refined, and it works like a brake, slowing how fast sugar enters your blood. And the fourth number matters more for you than for anyone younger: protein. A 2019 review in Frontiers in Nutrition pointed out that the standard recommendation of 0.8 grams per kilogram was based on young men, and it may simply not be enough as you age. Somewhere between 1.0 and 1.5 grams per kilogram a day improves both blood sugar control and muscle. That's because of something called anabolic resistance. As the body ages, it becomes harder to build muscle from the protein you eat, so you need more of it to fight muscle loss, what we call sarcopenia. Protein also keeps you full and flattens the sugar spike after eating. From here on, every choice we look at gets held up against those exact 4 numbers. Number 5. Let's start where it's easiest to trust, because when you're first learning to read that back label, you want a choice that's already been checked by someone other than the company selling it. The pattern to look for is a balanced bowl: vegetables, a lean protein, and 1 portion of quality carbohydrate, all in a controlled serving size. Nothing oversized, nothing swimming in sauce. Just the 3 pieces in sensible proportion. A good example you'll actually find in most stores is the Lean Cuisine Balance Bowls line. These carry the Better Choices for Life mark from the American Diabetes Association. Each bowl comes in at 400 calories or less, gives you a serving of vegetables, and adds 0 grams of sugar. Now, I want to be straight with you about what that mark means and what it doesn't. It is not a medical certification. The manufacturer pays a licensing fee to take part in that program with the Diabetes Association. That doesn't make it worthless. A company willing to build a product around those standards has usually done the harder work of keeping calories and added sugar down. But it's a starting point, not a stamp that lets you skip reading. You still turn the box over, so hold it up against our 4 numbers. On the strengths, the carbohydrate lands in a moderate range, and the added sugar is 0. 2 things working in your favor before you even heat it. The number to keep an eye on is sodium, because that swings a lot depending on which flavor you grab. A teriyaki or an Asian-style sauce can push the salt up quickly, while a simpler herb or lemon preparation usually stays gentler. Same product line, very different numbers on the back, depending on the flavor in your hand. That's number 5, dependable, easy to find, and a safe place to begin. Number 4. Once you're comfortable reading that label, you can ask for more than balance. You can ask the meal to actively work for your muscle while it holds your sugar steady. That's the step up here. The pattern is a power bowl, sometimes called a protein bowl, built on a whole grain instead of a refined one. That means brown rice or quinoa, grains that still have their outer bran layer, so your body breaks them down slowly instead of all at once. On top of that base, you get a generous amount of protein and plenty of vegetables. A widely available example is the Healthy Choice Power Bowls line. Dietitians point to these often because the protein and fiber run high, the price stays reasonable, and you can find them in most stores across the United States and Canada. Here's why this one earns its place for a body over 60. Remember that 4th number, protein, and the anabolic resistance we talked about. The fact that aging muscle needs more protein to hold its ground. A high-protein bowl hits that need directly, giving you the raw material to protect the muscle you have. And the whole grain underneath, paired with that fiber, keeps the sugar release slow and steady rather than sharp. So when you pick one of these up, put the fiber to the test first. You want that break of at least 3 grams, then check the base with your own eyes. 2 bowls from the same brand can look nearly identical on the front, but one is built on brown rice or quinoa and the other on white rice. That single swap changes how fast the meal moves your blood sugar. Choose the whole grain version every time, and you've turned an ordinary frozen dinner into something that feeds your muscle instead of just filling you up. Number 3. This one isn't about everyday eating. It's about the days when the fight is already uphill before you've eaten a bite. You know the mornings, I mean. You test, and the number on the meter is higher than you expected, and you haven't done anything wrong. On days like that, you want a specific kind of meal ready, one that's very low in carbohydrate, usually under about 20 grams, and high in protein. Think of it as the meal you reach for when the odds are already stacked against you, not the one you eat every night. A line that fits this role well is Real Good Foods. They make a number of low-carb, high-protein meals, and they've built their whole identity around being the choice for when your blood sugar is running high. This is exactly what turned things around for Ray on his rough mornings. Instead of reaching for one of those lean white pasta boxes and watching his number climb even higher, he started keeping a couple of these high-protein, low-carb meals on hand for those days. He told me the after-dinner spike he'd come to dread just softened. That was the first time he felt like he had a say in the outcome. But I need to give you a serious word of caution here, because this is where good intentions can go wrong. If you're taking insulin or a medication in the sulfonylurea family, suddenly switching to very low-carb meals can drop your blood sugar too far. Research on insulin users found more episodes of low blood sugar when carbohydrate was cut, but the medication dose stayed the same. So a change like this isn't just a grocery decision. It's a conversation with the doctor who manages your medication about whether your dose needs to come down to match. And speaking of those difficult mornings, I want to hear from you. What's the highest morning blood sugar number you've seen on your own meter recently? Share it in the comments. Because when you put that number out there, someone scrolling past realizes they're not the only one who's watched that reading climb. Number 2. Now we move to a meal that doesn't need a low-carb label to be gentle on your sugar. It manages that all on its own, thanks to what nature packed into it. The pattern here is a bowl built on beans, lentils, or non-starchy vegetables as its foundation. Picture a Tex-Mex bowl over black beans or something anchored by chickpeas. The bean is doing the heavy lifting, not a mound of white rice. Here's the mechanism, and it's worth understanding. Beans are rich in fiber, and they carry something called resistant starch, a kind of starch that passes through your small intestine almost undigested, so it doesn't send your sugar racing up the way ordinary starch does. There's a nice illustration of this in research on chickpea pasta, where the resistant starch nearly doubled from 1.83 up to 3.65 grams per 100 grams, and the glycemic index dropped along with it, from 39 down to 33. That's a measurable shift in how slowly the food releases its sugar, and it's exactly why a bean base is such a friend to your blood sugar. For a body over 60, this checks a lot of boxes at once. Beans keep you full for hours, they tend to sit easy on the stomach, and they bring plant protein alongside all that fiber. You're feeding your muscle and slowing your sugar in the same spoonful. One honest caution before we go on. A meal being plant-based or bean-forward doesn't automatically mean it's low in salt. Some of these bowls lean hard on seasoning to carry the flavor, and the sodium climbs right back up. So even here, with a meal that has so much going for it, you turn the box over and check that first number. The beans earn this one its spot at number 2, but only the version that hasn't been drowned in salt. And number 1. Here's the promise I made you at the very start. The meal almost everyone walks straight past in that aisle. I'll bet you've done it too. It isn't a box at all. It isn't the one stamped diabetic friendly in careful lettering. The single best choice for your blood sugar is a bag of frozen, non-starchy vegetables. Broccoli, green beans, spinach, cauliflower, paired with a plain frozen protein. A fish fillet with no breading. a chicken breast, a handful of shrimp. You put them together yourself, and it takes about 5 minutes. Now let me tell you why this sits at the top. With those 4 numbers we've been checking all along, you finally hold every one of them in your own hands. The sodium is close to 0 because you didn't pour a sauce packet over it. There's no added sugar because nobody added any. The fiber is high and the protein is high. It costs less than any prepared bowl, there's almost nothing wasted, and it holds on to its nutrients, which brings us right back to where we started, those frozen vegetables that outperformed 5-day-old fresh. That plain frozen protein gives you the building block of a real meal without dragging along the sodium and refined carbohydrate that come baked into a finished entree. This is what actually pulled Ray's morning numbers down. Not a premium brand, not a clever label. He kept a bag of frozen broccoli and a few fish fillets in that freezer, and on the tired nights when he didn't feel like cooking, he threw them together in a few minutes. He said to me, almost laughing, that after all those months of hunting for the perfect box, the best thing in his whole freezer turned out to be the cheapest and plainest, the stuff he'd been walking right past to get to the fancy dinners. So when I call this the best, I don't mean the most expensive or the most impressively packaged. I mean the one that hands you control. That's what best means at this table, control, not a label on the front. Now let's turn the card around for a moment, because knowing what to reach for only helps if you also know what to put back. A few kinds of frozen meals stack refined carbohydrate, sodium, and poor quality fat all into the same tray. And those are the ones worth leaving right where you found them. The oversized dinners first. The hungry man-style portions, built to fill a plate, and then some. Then the savory pies, the pot pies with their pastry crust, breaded fried fish, pizzas heavy with cheese, those frozen breakfast sandwiches, the fried appetizers and finger foods, and the frozen desserts, sitting quietly at the end of the aisle. Here's the measuring stick. Dietitians generally suggest staying under about 600 milligrams of sodium and getting more than 2 grams of fiber in a meal. Many of the items I just named blow right past that sodium mark. Some reach around 1,500 milligrams in a single serving, which is your entire day's budget in one sitting. And keep an eye out for hidden sugar, especially in the breakfast and dessert options. Learn to spot the words ending in O's, fructose, dextrose, maltose, and watch for any syrup showing up in the first 5 ingredients. Some of those morning sandwiches and frozen sweets carry as much sugar as a candy bar without ever calling themselves candy. I'm not telling you these are forbidden, and I don't want you to hear it that way. If you love a slice of frozen pizza now and then, have it. And balance the rest of your day around it. The harm isn't in one meal. It's in the meal becoming the habit. What matters is how often these land on your plate, not whether they ever do. So far, we've talked about which meals to pick up and which to pass by. But here's something just as useful. Even a middle-of-the-road frozen dinner can become a blood sugar-friendly meal if you upgrade it the right way. I call it the Frozen Meal Plus. Whatever tray you're heating, add a handful of frozen, non-starchy vegetables on the side. Add a little healthy fat, a quarter of an avocado, a scattering of nuts or seeds, or set a simple salad next to it. Each of those adds fiber and staying power, slows the sugar down, and brings almost no extra carbohydrate along with it. You've taken an ordinary meal and given it a break it didn't have before. Then there's portion size, and this one catches so many people. Turn the box over and read the serving size carefully. What looks like a single dinner is very often labeled as 2 servings, which means the carbohydrate and sodium you saw on the front are quietly doubled if you eat the whole thing. One more trick, and I'll give it to you honestly. When you cook a starch like rice, then cool it for 12 to 24 hours and reheat it. Part of that starch changes into a form your body digests less easily, which lowers the blood sugar response. Studies on cooled white rice show exactly that. But be fair about it. The effect varies by food, strong with rice and some pastas, inconsistent with potatoes, and with prepackaged meals, the evidence is thin. So treat it as a small bonus, not a miracle. In practice, lean on the bean-based and whole grain bowls first, or add your own cooked and cooled rice on the side. So let's bring this all back to that moment in the freezer aisle, cold air on your hands. The aisle was never your enemy. The word on the front of the box, healthy, light, balanced, that was only ever marketing. The real decision, the one that shows up on your meter the next morning, lives in 4 numbers on the back: the sodium, the total carbohydrate, the fiber, and the protein. Learn to read those, and the front of the box loses its power over you. And for a body past 60, that same freezer aisle cuts 2 ways. Used well, it's a tool that holds your blood sugar steady and protects the muscle you're working to keep. Used blindly, it quietly works against both. The way it did for Ray, month after month, while he was certain he'd been choosing wisely. If your morning numbers have stayed stubborn, even though you thought you were doing everything right, this may be the reason you've been looking for. So here's what to do, starting tonight. First, turn the box over and read the 4 numbers: carbohydrate around 30 to 45 grams, fiber at least 3, sodium under 600 milligrams a serving, and protein as high as you can get it, aiming for 15 to 20 grams or more. Ignore the words on the front. Second, use the Frozen Meal Plus. Always add a handful of frozen vegetables and a source of fat or protein to slow things down. Third, keep your number 1 option stocked: a bag of frozen vegetables and a bag of plain frozen fish or chicken for a meal you fully control, plus 1 very low-carb meal for the days your sugar is already high. And fourth, if you're moving toward lower-carb meals, ask your doctor this: if I switch to lower-carb dinners, do I need to adjust my insulin or my blood sugar medication? That one question protects you from a dangerous low. Now I'd like to hear from you. Of those 4 numbers, which one surprised you the